we're on to the New Orleans Pelicans, and so if you guys might want to sit tight for a couple hours while I work through this list of transactions. They hired Willie Green to be their next head coach after getting rid of Stan Van Gundy. They acquired Devonte Graham on a 4-year, $47.3 million contract, $37.5 million of which is guaranteed. He has just a $2.5 million guarantee in that fourth and final year. Jonas Valanciunas, the number 17 pick, which they used on Trey Murphy III, and number 51 pick, which became Brandon Boston Jr. They got all that for Eric Bledsoe. He has 1 year and $22 million guaranteed left on his deal. I'm projecting he gets waived in year 2. Otherwise, he's going to get paid $90.4 million. Steven Adams at 2 years and $35 million, which is the exact extension they signed him to after acquiring him for some reason last offseason. Wes Iwundu, the number 10 pick, which became Zaire Williams, the number 40 pick, which became Jared Butler, their own 2022 first-round pick that is lottery protected and then turns into 2 seconds if not conveyed. And then the Lakers' 2022 first-round pick, which is top 10 protected and turns into 2 seconds for the other team if not conveyed. New Orleans would actually keep that pick if it lands between or it's protected for New Orleans or 11, whatever it is, 30. And then they sent out cash. They also created a $17.1 million trade exception for Steven Adams. And I tripped over my own words there. New Orleans will keep it if it's top 10 protected, that Lakers pick. It goes to, my God, where's it? It goes to Charlotte, I believe. Or no, Memphis, if it finishes 11-30. There we go. They acquired Sacramento's 2022 second rounder, protected 31-54, and cash from the Clippers for that number 51 pick, which is Brandon Boston Jr. They drafted Herb Jones at number 35 and then signed him to a 3-year, $5.3 million deal. 2 years of that is guaranteed. They then acquired Thomas Satoransky, Garrett Temple, who was signed to a 3-year, $15.5 million deal. 2 of those years are guaranteed at $10.1 million, non-guaranteed in year 3. They also got Chicago's 2024 second-round pick and cash for Lonzo Ball on a 4-year, $80 million deal that's fully guaranteed, can get up to $84 million with incentives, and has a player option on the final season. They acquired Portland's 2026 second-round pick and cash for the number 43 pick, Greg Brown III. I thought that was an oddly ambitious play from Portland, by the way. I don't know how you felt about that. They then signed Josh Hart to a 3-year, $37.9 million deal. Only 1 year is guaranteed at $12 million. The second season, the final 2 seasons at $12.7 million a pop are non-guarantees. They signed Willie Hernan-Gomez to a 3-year, $7.3 million deal, fully guaranteed. They re-signed Didi Lozada to a 4-year, $7.7 million deal. 2 years is guaranteed, and then each of the final 2 years of that is non-guaranteed on that 4-year contract. They signed Jose Alvarado to a 2-way contract, and they signed Dalton Holmes to a 2-way contract. Some notable subtractions, just to recap, if you didn't get all that: Stan Van Gundy's gone, Lonzo Ball is gone, Steven Adams, Eric Bledsoe are gone, also James Johnson and Wes Iwundu. That was, and I probably lost people on just the description of what they gave up in some of the Devonte Graham deal, but what grade did you give the Pelicans for their offseason?
So this is a C-, and just that was, I mean, they did a ton. And so there's kind of just a handful of big items that inform my decision and kind of an overall feel of the organization that dropped it below average, but by the smallest amount you could. I think, like, again, in a trade, if you get the best player, which they did in Valanciunas, okay, that's potentially a positive. And I like Trey Murphy at number 17. So I'm okay with sort of what came out of that. I like Devonte Graham at his number. I really like the Josh Hart contract. I can't remember the last contract I saw that was 3 years, and the last 2 were essentially consecutive non-guarantees. It's a really interesting structure for a guy who's a rotation player. He's a good player.
Right. I know his rebounding can be overrated, and he shoots worse from 3 than most people would expect or realize. How did no one come in with like a more aggressive? Maybe New Orleans like somehow deterred it and made everyone believe they were going to match whatever. I honestly don't know how he didn't get more guaranteed money.
Yeah, he's a good player on it. I mean, that's a crazy amount of team control for a guy that you would think deserved more player control. So, I mean, there were some good things. And even losing Lonzo Ball and just deciding that, look, we sort of have 3 max level or big salary slots. Ingram already's got one taken up. Zion's going to definitely have one. Is Ball the third guy? Like, is he the third guy we're going to commit big money to? I'm sort of okay with them saying no. I would have been fine with them saying yes at that number. So I can't, like, I understand both sides. I'm not going to knock them way down or pump them up. I wouldn't have pumped them way up if they kept him, because that would have been, I don't know, potentially risky with finite resources. The coaching change, insofar as it's reflective of, like, you really botched it on hiring Van Gundy. And who knows what Willie Green is. It feels like a negative. The thing that really kind of got me and knocked this below average was, it sort of seemed like New Orleans thought it was going to be a player for Kyle Lowry. And then even Chris Paul, remember there were like little rumblings of like New
Right.
Orleans interest. It's like no scenario where either of those guys ever going there. And it just felt like either the Pelicans were deluded or they got played as like a leverage thing. I just don't know. There was no scenario that where that was real. And so their failure to make a big move or do something significant, even if that would have been like trading Ingram for something, just something to, because look, I don't know what you think, but I think all this stuff about Zion being unhappy is very legit. I think there's only one way this story ends, unless the Pelicans get way better very fast, and that's with him asking out before anyone's ever asked out. In
Really?
terms of, I think that's where it's going. I wouldn't say like, oh, this year it's going to happen, but I think there's enough smoke and for there to be fire, and I think we're getting a field. But look, I just think I don't think he is going to just be happy with what has happened this offseason, because I don't think they're meaningfully better. Maybe he's glad Van Gundy's gone and Willie Green's in, but they didn't do a ton. So the messaging for him is kind of like, man, I let some stuff leak that I wasn't super happy, and this is what you did. Like, okay, so maybe I need to crank it up a little bit. I don't know. So that's speculative, but that's kind of where I'm at. So it's a C minus. Some was okay. The sort of big picture stuff is getting a little more ominous, I would say, for the Pelicans. What did you think?
So the Zion stuff doesn't bug me too much. I do think it's real. I just don't know how much it matters because no one has turned down that first deal coming off the rookie scale. And maybe that speaks to more about how the draft is and should there even be a draft, or what happens after, should restricted free agency be changed? Until someone, it's one of those, when I was talking about the Lakers, until Russ proves that he could play off the ball, I'm just going to assume that he can't. And until Zion actually
Yeah.
turns down that money and asks her out, I'm going to assume that that's not going to happen. I gave him
I think I agree. Like, no one's going to say no to that money. I think what you might get is him just saying at some point, still on his rookie deal, like, you guys got to trade me or I'm just not going to play. Like, it's an Anthony Davis, like, I'm just sitting down, and so figure it out. Like that's the form I think it would take if it gets, as bad as it could.
if that's where
Anyway,
it's
sorry.
headed, and they know that's happening, and this is the offseason they turned in, can you get an F minus? But I actually gave them a D plus though. And
Okay.
I'm going to be actually complimentary first, because I think people are going to assume that it's just another person who covers the league at a national level, going to give surface level analysis. And maybe that's what this is. You look at this team, and I think one of the bigger things that they've done that I actually don't think people are really talking about, at least I haven't heard it, when Zion was off the court last year, your point guard in most lineups with either Eric Bledsoe, Kyra Lewis Jr., or Lonzo Ball, depending on how you want to view those two, while your centers were Steven Adams, Willie Hernan-Gomez, Jackson Hayes. Now, those minutes without Zion can be given to Devonte Graham as your point guard, Thomas Satoransky, who gives you some secondary playmaking, and then Jonas Valanciunas is not only just a better offensive player in general than Steven Adams, he can generate his own shot off the block and use his shoulder, and so you have more pathways to surviving the minutes that Zion is off the court, which I think is important. The Josh Hart deal you mentioned, that was good. I love Trey Murphy for this team. I think if you look at their wing rotation overall for a team that just didn't have a ton of wings, I really like I already like Trey Murphy. We said that. I obviously love Brandon Ingram. I think Josh Hart really helps you there. Maybe Herbert Jones can play some immediately. I'm a big Najee Marshall guy, like someone who could play basically three positions at this point, but certainly the 3 and the 4. They still feel like they're one injury away from disaster at every single position, if that makes any sense. Where it's like, if you lose Zion, your just backup 4 rotation is who's the backup four? Is it Najee Marshall? That's who you're going to consider it at that point? Or do we go to is it Jackson Hayes? Stan Van Gundy's not there anymore, so I'm going to assume no. Is it, do they try and get away with Josh Hart at the four, Brandon Ingram there? If Brandon Ingram gets injured on the wing, okay, like you have Trey Murphy, you have Josh Hart. It's like, I don't know. And then point guard is just if Devonte Graham gets injured, or how about this? If Devonte Graham has the season that he had last year, and this is someone who, a big believer in Devonte Graham, I think in this situation he'll be better off than he was in Charlotte. The dynamics changed there so much. He was a little banged up last year, but this is someone who historically cannot finish at the rim, even though he can toss assists there, has shown he can hit pull-up threes, but he also missed a bunch of them last season. He's definitely going to shoot. He can carry over the Lonzo Ball catch and shoot percentage. Now you get to the Lonzo Ball aspect of all this. What you said, I guess I can see both sides. Why did Garrett Temple need 2 guaranteed years in that sign and trade? If you're New Orleans, just because you have to overpay for leadership, or else he could have gone somewhere else, I guess, for $5 million. And I know that's not backbreaking, but you're giving up the best player in that deal, Lonzo Ball, who was really good. And if you, as you said, can say, you know what, we're fine with paying Lonzo Ball this as an outsider, then you should have paid Lonzo Ball that to me, figured it out later. You probably could have moved him to a different team. And I know some people, you look at some of Lonzo Ball's numbers, and he looks like this really great player. And he's officially a quality floor spacer, and he's going to bring value in transition. I think he gives you some value defensively, maybe not necessarily as like this lockdown individual guy, but just someone who's big and looking at the scope of guys that he can guard or that you can put him in certain situations. He's not going to save a defense that had Zion Williamson playing a bunch of minutes with Eric Bledsoe, who wasn't really trying. He's a flawed player because he can't create off the dribble, hasn't shown that he can really run a half-court offense. I'm like, you couldn't get more for him, or at least not get to a point where, we're still paying Garrett Temple beyond next season, or have to find a taker for him. And the other way I looked at this was, when you're looking at the Devonte Graham deal, one of the biggest compliments I could put is that it's a fake first rounder, because I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. And so lotto protection inoculates you against disaster. Okay, that's fine. Why were you making I guess there's value in undoing moves that you did rather than trying to stick them out. So I don't want to be hypocritical there, since I said I didn't hit the Timberwolves too hard for giving up on Culver, but you had to undo the Van Gundy hiring, and now you had to undo the Steven Adams extension and acquisition in the first place, when people were still puzzled why that happened. This offseason, to me, I think you can look at them and say, maybe they're a little bit better. And getting better at the Zion Williams in the non-Zion minutes is going to be huge for them. I don't know that they're that much deeper. And I think what they've ultimately done is given up a lot, or invested a lot in being as good or only negligibly better than they were last season. And if they're, even if they are noticeably better, how much credit do you give them if it's because, Zion is just ridiculous, he makes first team All NBA or something, Brandon Ingram is an all-star again, and they get either Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Kira Lewis Jr. sort of pops. None of those guys are involved in the offseason moves that they made, would be my rebuke to that. So I don't think there's a chance the Pelicans are worse to me, by the way. But if you're going to jump through all these hoops, all the transactions they did, giving up 2 protected first-round picks, I would say only one of them is going to convey. But to a team that is not contending, to do that and to not wind up substantially better beyond a shadow of a doubt, to me, that's really problematic. And this will bear out in the season. Maybe I should give them more props for actually undoing some of the moves that they did last offseason. Stan Van Gundy, Steven Adams, just getting Eric Bledsoe out of here. He was so bad for them last year. I can't understate that. I get all of that, but none of this stuff adds up to me to qualitatively this noticeable, appreciable upgrade. So I'm going to be fascinated to see what they do this season and how much their off-season maneuverings have anything to do with it. Because I do think there's a chance that they've basically made a lateral move when all said and done in the standings. And again, when we just went through that entire body of work, you need to be better than you were last season, is just where I'm at. And so I'm actually going to grade them pretty harshly there. And that's after I did go into this thinking I might be able to pull out a C minus or a C for them just because I love the Josh Hart deal. I love Trey Murphy for them. And that also makes the salary dumps look better because I might have wanted them to draft that type of player had they stayed at number 10, but maybe you don't want to go plug and play that low. So to still wind up with Trey Murphy at number 17, that's really good. So if you want me to bump it up to a C minus because you think I'm being like an asshole here, fine. I will go. I can't give them higher than a C minus though. After trying to go through everything that they did,
No, I'm gonna bump down to a D plus just to keep people mad. Then how about that?